Hello, everybody, and welcome to Town Hall 10, AIA Allied Members Talk Shop, Manufacturing, and the Supply Chain. We're glad you're here, and the program will start in just a moment. Please remember to mute yourselves and turn off your camera, which will help us conserve bandwidth and gives us a smoother presentation. The program will start in just a moment. Today's panelists are Manuel Abello, Molly Dravenstott, Tim Kersey, and Glenn Remler. Our moderator today is Cheryl Jacobs. At the end of this session, there will be a Q&A session, so please feel free to send us your questions to everyone at any time during this meeting, and you can send them via the Zoom chat feature, and we will answer them all towards the end of the meeting. Good afternoon. My name is Colleen Stovall, and I'm the Director of Programs and Events for AIA Miami. I'd like to welcome you to the 10th in a series of Town Hall conversations sponsored by AIA Miami. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to submit questions to everyone at any time during the Town Hall via the chat feature on Zoom, and we'll answer them towards the end of the Town Hall. Please remember to mute yourselves and turn off your video. This will save on bandwidth and give us a smoother presentation. And if you forget, I'm going to mute you. This meeting will be recorded and will be available on the AIA Miami website after June 12th. And now I'd like to introduce our Executive Vice President of AIA Miami, Cheryl Jacobs.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our 10th, I can't believe it, Zoom chat town hall. And we're happy to bring to you today 3 of our great allied partners and to talk about what's going on with them in terms of all this Zoom meeting / COVID / pandemic / whatever stuff we're all going through. I first want to take a minute to just let you know next week's town hall will be about the future of architectural education. We're lucky to have Jason Chandler, Director of the Architecture Program at FIU, Rodolphe El-Khoury, the Dean of the UM School of Architecture, and Tony Abate, the Vice Provost at the Fort Lauderdale FAU, sorry, Tony, campus. We do these weekly. If you have ideas for topics, please send them to us in the survey that we send out afterwards. I wanted to remind you that we're trying to stay as engaged with all of you as we can. We have our Monday COVID-19 updates newsletter with everything that's going on in the community and in our profession. Wednesday, we have our MCAD, Miami Center for Architecture and Design, Things to Do newsletter, our MCAD Survival Guide, we're calling it. And of course, as always, on Friday, we have our Friday Facts that talks about our programming and educational opportunities. And for you architects out there, remember that you have to have your 24 credits by the end of this year. And we are offering on a regular basis HSW continuing education for you. And we will be having our fall event with all of our classes, our DTE, Design and Technology Expo, but it will most likely be online, so be prepared for that. So with that, I want to bring in our speakers. If you guys would unmute and come on, here you are. Manny? Great. So let me welcome first Glenn Remler. Glenn is the Architectural Account Executive with Sherwin Williams. Hi, Glenn.
Hi, Cheryl. Thank you.
Hey. Next is Manuel Abello. Manny is the Associate Sales Representative for Lutron Electronics. Welcome, Manny.
Hey, Cheryl. Hi, everybody.
And we have two for the price of one from SOPREMA today. Tim Kersey, who's Vice President and General Manager of SOPREMA, and Molly Dravenstott, who's the Plant Manager in Wadsworth, Ohio. So welcome, you guys, all the way from Ohio.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you then, because we talk all the time about what's happening down here, but how are things going in Ohio, and how are you guys doing?
Well, we're doing okay. It's been a challenge around the world, not just here, obviously, but I spoke to the panelists, and good to meet these two gentlemen that are on the panel with me today. Before we came on the air, and I was explaining that one of the biggest challenges we've had is actually bringing people back to work. But we're doing great. Luckily, we were able to work at home. The new terms I'm having to learn. I've been in the industry for a while, so teleworking was a new term for me. So we've been able to basically run the business seamlessly by teleworking. And then there are certain people, obviously, that are getting a little bit, I guess the word is stir crazy, a little cabin fever. And luckily, the governor of Ohio loosened up the guidelines just a few weeks ago and allowed us to start coming back to work, I would say in pieces, if I could say it that way, by department or partial departments. And it's just been an interesting process to bring people back to work. And I'll let Molly speak later about manufacturing, but the two components obviously are office and factory for the most part, and it's been a chore to write enough protocols that we're all comfortable, including me as an executive in the company, to bring people back to work and people feel good about it. But we're good. Everybody's good here.
Right. Well, yes, it's something that we're all learning to deal with, and for however long this is going to be. Glenn, you're out in the field most of the time, so how are you doing?
It's definitely been challenging. I enjoy being out in the field and miss seeing all of you. But yeah, we have gone from doing face-to-face in your offices to many online presentations, which have been quite challenging, but I think as everybody has been adapted to working from home, that they've been receptive of our presentations, being supportive, as you mentioned, about the continuing education classes. That's been helpful. Many of you had to leave your tools, your color marketing tools. So we've been able to make sure that you have your color marketing tools remotely. We've been able to work with you with providing paint specifications, technical support, working remotely. So we've had a shift and we've had to adapt, but I think we've got a good system that we're working on right now, as many of you are still working from home.
Thanks. How about you, Manny? I'm trying to tell, I can't tell I think you're home, right?
I am, yes. No, I echo a lot of the same sentiments that Glenn and Tim have mentioned. Going from personal face-to-face communications to virtual came with its challenges. A lot of it was the job sites as well. It was very easy to just go on site and kind of help with a technical issue before this, and now trying to make use of FaceTime or trying to make use of being able to provide technical support over the phone has had its challenges.
Well, if you can't say anything else about all of us, we have been resilient, I think, and have so many of us, as we've been doing this and talking to everyone, have figured out how to adapt. That's kind of what we're all about, I think. So let me ask you, Glenn, how has the supply chain been disrupted in terms of materials for you guys?
Yeah, we have over 34 manufacturing facilities throughout the U.S. and Canada. So, and with the chemicals and products that we deal with, we honestly have not been that disruptive as far as our products being manufactured. In fact, our suppliers have been really cooperative and working with us to make sure that our lines don't get disruptive. We actually, at one of our facilities in Ohio, we were able to convert it from, our protective and marine division type coatings over to making hand sanitizer and stuff. So we've been pretty fortunate enough to have these kind of larger relationships and being able to help our own and work with our own suppliers. So from a manufacturing standpoint, we have not had that much disruption within our facilities. Also, the way, as far as people that may have had COVID or anything, we haven't seen, it's been very minimal as far as operations. We haven't had to shut down any facilities that we know of.
What about you, Tim? I know that Molly's on our plant manager. And so how are things going there and what kind of steps are you taking?
Okay. I'll speak maybe to the business side and let Molly speak up specific to manufacturing. I wrote a note here because this is a long name. Just for those of you who may not deal with this every day, it's the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is CISA. Luckily, early on in this whole process, they deemed the construction business essentially in total to be essential, as you guys well know.
Right.
So it made that a little easier, I think, for our business from a supply chain point of view. And just like Glenn mentioned, we've had little to no disruption of supply chain, which is not the same that I'm hearing from all of my peers around the country. But we do have multiple locations as well for manufacturing in 4 different states and various locations in Canada and throughout the rest of the world. So we've not been disrupted, but I'll let Molly, excuse me, speak directly to the manufacturing side.
Sure. From a manufacturing perspective, we haven't really been affected aside from actual effects of the COVID, but we were deemed an essential business and continue to operate through this entire thing. And we developed a task force very early on with our manufacturing. So we have 5 manufacturing sites in different states in the United States, and we were able to come together very early in March and start to develop our protocols to have as minimal impact as possible and to be prepared in the event of a COVID case.
That's great.
I'm sorry, I was going to share with you as
No
well.
worries.
Just so you know, we have actually had cases in our manufacturing locations in 3 different sites, and the first one was in March, and Molly and her team had done a fantastic job of protocols before it happened. And our team also was great in the fact that they all came together as soon as we knew. We had a quick meeting, separated, and they were able to shut our facility down safely, and everybody volunteered to stay and do that. It was our first time to go through anything like that in our history. And we had someone come in within 2 days, a complete sanitization of every part of our facility, manufacturing location, the warehousing, laboratories, break rooms, offices. And we were actually back up and running in 3 days. And everybody on board going through that process. So she did a great job with the protocols.
Well, I think part of that's terrific. And I think part of it too is having employees feel safe to come back to work.
Yes.
And that's so important. What about you, Manny? Have you had any difficulties in getting your products?
No, so similarly, our manufacturing lead times weren't really affected. I think we leveraged having manufacturing plants internationally in the Caribbean, Mexico, and Asia, and the ability to change what those manufacturing plants are actually manufacturing. So shifting those needs to other plants as needed to maintain the same lead times. think early on, Lutron instituted 5 pillars of protection modeled after the CDC requirements. So social distancing, enhanced disinfection and temperature screenings, that sort of stuff, not just in the manufacturing plants, but throughout the organization. And similarly, that has helped maintain the effect to minimal negative impact.
That's great. So I think one of the most important things in terms of you guys and your connection to our membership is, you know, since nobody is doing face-to-face meetings and we're doing online programming, how have you felt that, you know, what's missing and how are you adapting to meet with your clients, your customers? Manny, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so this definitely hits home, particularly when, you know, going into the office and sitting down with an architect and reviewing specs was such a common everyday occurrence. So now some of the tools that were kind of in the back, not really often used to do team virtual conferences and that sort of stuff, became the norm. A lot of it was just finding which platform the customer is more familiar with or more comfortable with, because there's so many options out there. So I think early on there's always some technical difficulties as everybody got used to it. It does present new challenges, especially when you're providing a product that's experiential or, you know, requires the observance of the materiality. Light, for example, is very hard to experience across a virtual screen. So we relied a lot on that personal experience to do that. And we found new ways, much better visuals and presentations to present virtually and online that can convey those messages.
Yeah, that's, I think that one of the things that a lot of our members are talking about is mentoring. You know, how they're mentoring the young architects, because there's so much that happens in a personal meeting that doesn't necessarily happen when you're not right next to that person. What about you, Glenn? How has that been working out for you?
So we started obviously with, I already had a lot of face-to-face meetings, you know, in the beginning. So we converted many of those to the virtual, and then also through, you know, through AIA Miami and other associations, we've been able to do other, you know, continuing education classes. But what we're finding out now is that a lot of specifiers are probably have some credits till 2022 almost. So what we've been offering and shifting is focusing on branded presentations as well. So dialing into some of the industry, so using our products and focusing in on whether it's healthcare, whether it's commercial, education, you know, multifamily type branded CEs. So we're now sharing that it's like a, you know, 20-30 minute presentation instead of just doing a full hour, going over the scope, going over different projects, different functions, and what coatings have to do. So we've kind of now shifting our you know, the interest and hopefully, you know, providing our specifiers some additional information on how to better specify.
You know, I know the same thing with Manny. You said, you know, with lighting, it's hard to really experience that on the screen. And it's actually the same thing with color, Glenn, because every monitor is a little bit different. So I know that is a process that has been, that, you know, all of you have been dealing with. And Tim, I know that that's not what you're doing, but what have you heard from your people in the field?
We have adapted, like the other two gentlemen. Luckily, we're not dealing with light and some color, but not as much as you guys. But what we have done is to put together presentations adapted to online, because I'm one of these people personally that's a tactile learner. I need something in my hands to touch and feel, and so we put kits together that we can send out in advance if we have an architectural presentation or a branded presentation, so that the customers have that in their hands no matter where they are, either at home or if they've gone back to the office. And then our sales folks are giving the presentations remotely and trying to do the demonstrations with the hands-on as best as possible with a little instruction online to do so. That's what we have done. And like you, Glenn, we've shortened our presentations because it is tough. If you're like me with a little bit of ADD, then being on the computer monitor and not face to face is a little bit more difficult to keep the attention span. So we've tried to make them a little more, let's say, succinct and a little more interactive online as best we can.
So how do you feel that, or has everything that's been going on affected not just how you work with your clients and your manufacturing, but what about the number of projects, and have there been cancellations of orders, and how do you see things shaking out through the rest of this year, Glenn?
Yeah, especially in the beginning, we saw, I would say, a lot of our interior, the multifamily projects get on hold, some of the condos or other projects, commercial projects. A lot of the exterior was, again, being an essential business, we definitely saw a slowdown, but some projects still keep going. So, we definitely on more on the interior stuff. Now it seems to be picking up again. Just last month in May, we've seen an increase both in interior and exterior projects. I think a lot of people have already signed agreements. So we believe that projects are still gonna still happen. We would probably say more towards 2021, 22, where we may see a slight fall, just depending on specific industries, like in education or municipal projects may even slow down a little bit because of government spending and everything else. But certain projects, like your healthcare projects, some of your commercial projects, your warehouses, we still see them going on right now, and if they're already signed and moving forward.
What about you, Manny?
I would say in totality, we had the same number of projects moving forward, but the pipeline definitely got restructured. So everything that was healthcare related became top priority, and we had shifted equipment there immediately almost. We saw a lot of growth, funny enough, in the residential side as more people spent time at home realizing what they have or don't have at home. They started getting more things for their home. So residentially, we saw a lot of projects still move forward. But in general, yeah, it did get restructured. The larger the project, the more likely funding had been secured way in advance. So those projects tended to stay unaffected. But at a certain point, the smaller projects were the ones that were put on hold, either indefinitely or until further notice.
And Tim?
Similar story, specifically to Florida for your group there, business has remained strong. So we've actually basically been on par with 2019 in the Florida market so far. But other pockets of the country, like everyone is aware, New York, Seattle, Northern California, areas like that, completely shut down, or at least except for a few essential projects. And then New York's beginning to open back up, but it's taking a while. Basically, they shut down everything in New York City, which is a sizable market for us. And then that really just ground to a halt. And now it's beginning to pick back up. But I think one of the I guess, challenges for the construction industry on the roofing and waterproofing side is trying to get the backlog of work caught up from the contractor's point of view. The contractors have been out of business in those particular cities or states, and the work is there, and they're going to have trouble catching back up, I think, especially with the employment situation the way it is, unemployment, and trying to get some of those workers back on site That's some of the challenges that we hear about. So, but yeah, in general, things could have been worse, I think, but Florida's been really good.
It's been interesting, and speaking to the other architecture firms and the contractors, and I think nobody knows what 2021 is really going to be like. I did hear that now we're officially in recession, but for now we seem to all be doing well. And I wanted to, I see a comment here that that Colleen is saying, just so you know, Tim and Molly are following social distancing, but we should call it physical distancing, not social distancing.
Yes.
Protocol while sharing one screen.
Yeah.
So that's why Molly looks so tiny there in the background. In the background. So one of the areas that we were going back to the manufacturing side again. How do you think this is going to affect us for the long term? Because this is a 100-year event, obviously, but it's not meaning that it couldn't happen again. And so what are the kinds of things that your firms are looking at to be prepared, so that should this kind of thing happen again, we won't have to go into such a panic at the beginning? Tim, what are you looking at for the long term?
Well, it's basically already been done, and that is written protocols. I know that maybe some very large companies may have protocols in place for such events, but because it hasn't happened since the Spanish flu, we did not have anything written specific to a pandemic, but now we do. So if this were to ever occur again, or we get a resurgence in the fall, like some may predict, and I've actually been on 2 business trips now in the last couple of weeks, and based on what I'm seeing, I think there's a likelihood it could spike back up in the fall. But we're prepared with written protocols now, so we don't have to go through that process. I spent, let's say, about 6 weeks of my time, and for the most part during that 6-week period, doing nothing but working on COVID-19 related issues. And Molly spent an inordinate amount of time working on those protocols, and we will not have to do that again. So from that perspective, I think we're pretty well set if we have a recurrence.
So before we go to Glenn and Manny, I have to have a shout out to Molly, a woman plant manager. Woohoo, that's pretty, I like seeing that. Good for you. So Glenn, in terms of, the long term, what has Sherwin Williams been looking?
Yeah, I think similar to Tim, I think having the protocol, I'm not all that familiar with exactly what they have written down or, what they've implemented from this. I just know our company really takes a strong stance in safety and performance and how to better ourselves. So I don't have the exact formula, but I would imagine that we definitely have certain protocols so that should this, happen again, we would be able to manage. I know with our Winter Haven location here, in Florida, we haven't had a disruption in our coatings being distributed to all of our stores here in Florida and the Caribbean. So whatever steps they've taken, I'm sure they followed, whatever the company's corporate protocol and been able to fulfill, any orders and stuff. So.
What about you, Manny, for the long term?
For the long term, the 5 pillars of protection that Lutron enacted aren't going anywhere. A lot of it was obviously reactive because it is such a novel situation, but it's turning into something that will be integral to the onboarding process of new hires and training, the initial outfitting of equipment that you're usually given. So if you're used to just be given a hard hat and steel toe boots, now you'll also have masks and those sort of equipment to deal with your everyday job. So, and the team that was put in place, that was pretty much a collateral duty to, the executives at Lutron, will be established in the long run and prepared and receive training to handle this in the future.
That's great. So one of the comments in the chat is from Rick Armstrong. At Formica, we're seeing a strong comeback over the last 30 days. And I think each of you said that you're seeing things pick up again, right?
Yes. In fact, even our Caribbean market has picked up. They were at from the government, they were at shutdown. So we've seen over these past 30 days a real strong presence back in the Caribbean, and obviously here in Florida, we're definitely have picked up and doing very well right now.
I know that, Manny, a lot of your products come from Europe. And, there was a complete shutdown there in Italy and France. And so, and it's surprising to me that hasn't hurt you guys. So I'm glad to hear that. But do you think that you may look at different markets after this for your products?
Definitely. Like I said, I think there was still growth in the residential market, which Lutron does, right? Commercial and residential. A lot of the ability to mitigate the impact of COVID came, from 50 years of manufacturing experience. Europe, Mexico, the Caribbean, Northeast US, and Asia are all manufacturing sites. So as COVID spread globally, we were able to shift manufacturing that's needed throughout the world to avoid the impact. I would say there's a big uptick in touchless technology. So a lot of the wireless products that we were making and the benefits being the faster installation times and that sort of stuff now have a completely new application, which is just being touchless in general to prevent the spread of germs.
Well, and in terms of coatings, Glenn, I know that as we've spoken to other architects and some of our other programs, that now even more so health is important. And a lot of the materials that you sell for healthcare, I'm wondering if there is a request for them, those kinds of things in other kinds of facilities and even for the residential market.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a topic that we've hit on since this pandemic. Yeah, we have several different coatings. It starts with our architectural coating, our ProMar 200, which is a zero VOC, most commonly used on wall surfaces. But we even have Harmony, which is not only a zero VOC, but it's odor reducing and it's formaldehyde reducing. So it helps eliminate odors and formaldehyde within within those walls or surfaces that painted. About 3 years ago, 2016, we launched the first microbicidal paint, which is completely different than antimicrobial, which has to do with mold and mildew. So microbicidal paint, this coating, it's called Paint Shield, has the ability to kill 99.9% of certain bacteria such as VREs, MRSA, E. coli, staph, within 2 hours of being exposed on that surface. So this type of coating, and it's EPA registered as well. So it's definitely a coating. It has not been tested for COVID. COVID are viruses that is transmitted through the air. These coating was tested 4 years ago for bacteria surfaces, which is more common on wall surfaces. So yes, as a manufacturer, we have focused a lot of our coatings, not just for property, but for functionality in specific industries.
That's really interesting. And I know that, what I'm hoping is that resilient and sustainable issues aren't forgotten in all of this. but I know that health is something that everybody is looking at, and I'm wondering, you know, if that has been something that you're addressing, Tim.
Yeah, we've got a number of products for building enclosure that obviously we're all about keeping water out of the building, but it's not just liquid water, it's also water vapor. So we have roofing products, we can cover the whole box, all 6 sides of the building. One is vapor permeable membranes that go on the walls, or we have impermeable membranes as well, depending on what's needed in each individual climate. So we do a lot for moisture control in the building, but we also have some unique products now that actually, believe it or not, will take pollutants out of the air. And when they're placed on the rooftop, they have photocatalytic chemicals in those. That's a specific granule produced by 3M that will actually take nitrous oxide type chemicals out of the air and convert that to something that's not harmful. So there's a number of things we're working on, as well as bio-based material. You talk about sustainability. We're trying to convert certain petroleum materials in our adhesives and membranes into plant-based material, and actually have a couple of products that are produced at this time at one of our European facilities. They're kind of the leader in that technology within the SOPREMA group, and we have that available to us to sell in the United States, and looking forward to the day we produce it here as well. So a lot of things in the works, plus a lot of products made from wood that we're doing in Europe now. They actually do some spun wood wool insulations in Europe, which are very unique. It's almost like fiberglass insulation batting or other types, but it's actually made out of wood. So a lot of things coming even in the roofing industry. It may not be a sexy industry, maybe like paint or lighting, but
Wait, paint is sexy?
I think so. There's a lot of colors there.
Look at my blue.
A lot of cool things you can do, and technologies are definitely emerging in the roofing industry as well.
Well, and I know for sure, you know, everyone is looking at that, and it's so important for all of our companies to really start going in that direction, whether they're legislated to do that or not. It's interesting. I see a question here, and we've kind of covered that about working on new products focused on health-related issues. And are you, one of the things that is mentioned in this question is, are you thinking about refocusing your marketing and technical efforts to address those health-related issues? Manny, is that something that?
Definitely. I think it's the timing is somewhat serendipitous. One of the big refocusings that were already happening at Lutron in our marketing and basically just creating a holistic story of all the technologies that we offer is human-centric design. Right, we've coined the term Lutron HXL as a design approach that focuses on that human experience with the space, be it through lighting or shading or controls. And never is there a time to be more focused on the human experience. Now, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It shouldn't be at the expense of sustainability. So it should take that into account as well. And that's a big focus of what we do, because it's a human experience with the space, but also with the environment at large. So it is just a time for that message to resonate and be spread.
So, Molly, can you talk about some of the specific things you've done in your factory?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, basically our plants throughout the United States came together, and even through Canada came together to develop these protocols very early on in the pandemic. Actually, I think before it was declared a pandemic, we were talking about it. So we started to develop those protocols so that we could react very quickly and very appropriately without any panic involved. So we've implemented social distancing in the plants, which for us was not a huge challenge due to the sheer size of our manufacturing operation. But when we start to look at our distribution operation, it was a little more of a challenge, and we were able to find some really good solutions to limit the number of people coming into our plant and actually make a more efficient work setup that will maintain throughout this, even as we start to lift some of these rules. So like Tim said, developing the protocols was really the hard part, and reacting when we did have the cases. So I think what we've done here is something that's very sustainable, and things that we can learn and take with us as we grow as a company. So
that's really great. And I'm sure that each of you, or at least from Lutron and Sherwin Williams, we don't have representatives from your different manufacturing groups, but I'm sure that you all the different companies belong to associations related to your industry, and that you're all sharing all the great developments that you've had. And I think that in terms of how we all, how businesses are developed and how products are manufactured, there's a positive aspect to a very terrible thing that happened in sharing information. So I think that's terrific. So I wanted to remind if anyone out there, if you have questions, now is the time to send them in on the chat, and I will read them. And in the meantime, if as those questions are coming in, let me ask you, and I'll start with you, Manny. What can our organization, in terms of AIA here in Miami, what can we do for you to help you reach out to our members and connect?
Definitely. I mean, these sort of events are a great start. It's been challenging to get a hold of people, and the timing a lot of times doesn't work to have everyone in a single office get together. So when it's firm agnostic through the AIA forum, that's great. I think one thing that would be critical is help us help you and understand what is it that you want to hear about, because I think early on the architectural firms got saturated with virtual CEU offers, right? I think a lot of manufacturers found that time to be good to train, but there may be topics that we're not covering, new information or new topics that you're interested in, and we probably have the resources and to put those together, just haven't heard the need for them yet. So feedback would be great.
Well, that's something we can certainly do in our surveys that we send to our membership, for sure. What about you, Glenn?
Actually, very similar to Manny. So, yeah, you've been extremely helpful with us. So, continued, the virtual presence until later on, and just the communication has been great. Being able to provide our courses and stuff like this with the virtual town hall and other things have been really successful.
Thanks. Tim, I know that there's a very active chapter, AIA chapter by you. I don't know how connected you are to it, but what are some of the things that you think a professional association like AIA can do to help our manufacturers and our suppliers?
It's a good question. My answers are going to be similar. I want to step back and address the industry associations in general that you just mentioned a moment ago. Never in my career have I seen the industry, at least the roofing, waterproofing industry, coalesce like it has in the last 3 months. And that goes across the different disciplines in the industry, whether it's the manufacturing associations, plural, which include the asphalt roofers, SPRI, ERA, and others out there, the building enclosure consultants group, the NRCA, MRCA, the contracting side. One of the things that's happened, I think it'd be good for the AIA to continue to be involved in, is this coalescence of the entire industry. And now I was kind of reflecting back. I've been doing this a while, and I'm thinking about, we've had the technology, quite honestly, to do video conferencing for about 15 years on a commercial basis, actually available to individuals through Skype. And I think we never used it, or used it so seldom that But it's been there. So this pandemic, if nothing else, has forced us into using this tool so that here we are. I mean, I'm getting to speak with the great folks on the panel and all the people listening, and it's caused the industry to use the tool. And now there are literally thousands of people represented on these meetings versus a few dozen, let's say. So what could AIA do? It's back to just letting us know what you need, your membership. Are we doing the right things with our revamped presentations that we hope are adequate for online training and product knowledge? And if they're not, you know, obviously we want that feedback to understand how better to educate and train and support your group. But becoming a part of that industry coalition that we have, I know you're involved in some ways in some markets, but it's a great thing, and I'm really happy and pleased that it's come together the way that it has. So.
And we have done, I've always been about collaboration. So we've always collaborated a lot with other associations, but we're actually at the end of this month pulling together a roundtable of all of our professional associations in our industry to share information. And I think that now it's more important than it ever was. I agree with that 100%. I have a couple of other more questions and comments, and one of our other allied members is saying, are architects asking more questions or requesting more information from you in regard to health-related aspects of your products? Glenn, have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more interest and focus, like we said, on specific industries, as I mentioned about healthcare, but looking for the newest technologies. And I think it's been a time where instead of being in the office working from home for a lot of you, it just seems that there's a lot more interest in what we have to offer. Like I've seen an increase of our resinous floor systems. So we have decorative and industrial floor systems. So we've been speccing a lot of terrazzo or back, you know, for restaurants or future projects, like our soft top products. So there's been a lot of different interests and a lot more focus on, you know, what products that we have, how they can relate to specific industries, and how, you know, whether you're working on a sustainable project or not, you know, what are the products that can help to grow. In fact, one last thing is regards to cleaning on wall surfaces is now that, you know, we have a lot of use of hand sanitizers and other cleaning agents. So making sure those wall surfaces. So, you know, I've been doing a lot of specifications and giving product recommendations on, you know, not just using an acrylic coating, but epoxies and other systems based on the current needs and future, whether it's for a project or for your office.
Manny, have you had questions about products that are easier to clean, maybe?
Definitely. So a lot of requests for cleaning guidelines to be added into specifications. A lot of questions about, again, wireless technology and how that could be used in a touchless technology application. With regards to window treatments, we've definitely seen an uptick on inquiries for the antimicrobial fabrics and fabrics that can be cleaned and are robust in that sense. So there's a general shift to design considerations, including cleaning requirements and those type of questions and requests.
Great. So we're close to the end, and I like to kind of end this with a question. What and Tim, I'm going to throw this to you first. What is the most important thing that you want us to remember, that you'd like for us to know?
I actually thought about this. Don't get complacent. It's so easy. It's summertime. People have been cooped up in their homes for a long time. And it is just so easy for us to fall right back into old habits, including myself. And we kind of have a little rule around here. It's like we kind of throw the penalty flag if we see anybody doing anything including me. And I need to be the first one to be called out if we're not following all the guidelines. So that, if nothing else, it's just try to keep it in the forefront of your mind. And everything is cliche after about 3 months of dealing with this, but the word or the term new normal, I think is going to have to apply for a very long time. And we're going to have to be diligent in the face mask and the hand washing, not touching the eyes, nose, and mouth, and all those things, of spacing. I'm like you, I don't like the term social distancing. I wish they would call it something else, but they don't, social spacing. But if nothing else, is just keeping that in everybody's mind, constant reminders. I like Manuel's 5 pillars and the things that I've been seeing so many different protocols and pillars from different companies, and we always take good ideas where they come. And just please remember, that's all I can say, is be reminded every single day when you wake up, don't deviate from these protocols that keep us safe. And before I go, I just want to thank you and Miami, AIA, and Cheryl and Colleen for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to be on your panel today with Glenn and Manuel. So thank you.
Well, Tim, it's our pleasure. Thank you. Molly, what would you like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think very similar to Tim, and as I mentioned earlier, I think this was a good opportunity that if we look at it the right way, we were able to develop a lot of protocols that are going to have long-lasting effects if we allow them to. In manufacturing, we're implementing some digital applications for better communications, and I think this was a really good growth opportunity for our organization. It was a difficult time, but I think, you know, we can't become complacent, because like Tim said, after 3 months, it is a little bit tiring, and I would be lying if I said it wasn't exhausting at times. But I think out of all of this, we've had some good opportunities, and if we continue to build and adapt upon those opportunities, that this is going to make us a stronger organization, and I think that others can learn the same thing.
Thanks. Glenn, parting words?
Yeah, I think from a manufacturing standpoint, I think we've been pretty successful from the start with getting our products out to our clients, our needs, our DIYs, our contractors. I think from an immediate standpoint, we recognize, you know, being an essential business, that we still had to operate, and we recognize to go to curbside and getting our employees and everybody else with gloves, hand sanitizer, masks, and everything else. So we reacted pretty quickly from the forefront, and I think we're going to continue those some of those practices, obviously, moving forward, and wherever, you know, what happens with the pandemic. But from an architectural standpoint, from a specifying standpoint, I think everybody's recognizing the need for whether social distancing in your office, or, you know, the amount of cleaning, the maintenance that's going to be taking part. So instead of just looking at colors and sheen, we're looking more at product function. You know, again, whether it's on walls or floors or other areas, making sure that these products, these maintenance manuals or schedules that you may be doing moving forward, the coatings, and you'll have that protection moving forward. So I think it's pretty essential that you reach, you know, with your manufacturer and find out how they can help. Coatings are more than just color and sheen. A lot of them play an important function as well. So I mentioned odor reducing and some other terms that are available for the market. So, you know, just make sure you contact and find out what new technologies that we have available.
Great. Manny, things for us to remember?
Definitely. I'd like to echo the sentiments of Tim and Glenn, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be on this board with the other panelists, and for everything you do. I would say, you know, Lutron's #1 principle is to take care of the customer. So COVID-19 and the pandemic definitely tested our ability to do that. And whether it be rearranging how we did manufacturing or adapting to virtual presentations, we strive to take care of the customer even during these conditions. From an opportunity standpoint, I think the way everything has been shaken up, and as Tim was saying, as the new becomes normal, maybe this is an opportunity to look proactively instead of just reacting to the condition, and include touchless technology, you know, antimicrobial, not at the expense of sustainability, but also tie in all of those threads, resiliency and social equity, and make it more better for the human experience and health overall.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you from Miami, from AIA Miami. Keep in touch, everybody. We have great programming every week. We have lots of opportunities for you to connect. And if you have ideas, again, for programs, please either shoot me an email or send that back to us in the survey that we sent. Thank you, Tim, Molly, Glenn, and Manny. I really appreciate your time, and I hope everybody that called in enjoyed our program, and see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.